Hey guys, welcome to Tuesday morning's devotional. We are into chapter 15 of the book of 2 Samuel. We're talking about David still. David had two very famous sons. He had a few, but these were his two famous ones. We know about Solomon. He was the one who was blessed with incredible wisdom, and he's the one who wrote the wisdom literature that we have in the Old Testament book. But he had another son, a guy named of Absalom. Absalom was the movie star amongst them. Absalom had beautiful hair. He had a face like a movie star, and he acted, I think, somewhat like one maybe as well. I don't know against movie stars, but Absalom was the son of David, and he didn't do very well. At one stage, he acted in anger, and he went out and he sought revenge. It was a justified, in a sense, revenge, and David could not see him for a while. But one day he came back to David and he said, David, I know I went out in revenge on a family issue, but David, can I please be restored to the kingdom again? And he restored him to the kingdom. He brought him back as his son. But it wasn't long before Absalom began to look at the kingdom and say, hey, what's so good about my dad? What's so good about my King David, who everybody just holds in such high esteem? Look at me. I'm pretty gifted. I'm pretty talented. I'm very good looking. And I got the gift of the gab. And I think that I should have the king's position. And so he began to conspire against the king. And in chapter 15, we have a picture of this conspiracy taking place. And a civil war is beginning to happen within the household of David. Now, David was a great warrior and a great king, but I'm not sure he was a particularly good father. His whole family is in disarray, and his son begins to rebel against him to take over the kingdom. Absalom stands at the gate of the city, and he says to everybody, anybody got a problem? You can come and see me, and I will give you the answer to the problem. If you've got any challenges with the kingdom right now, come and see me, and I will help you, and I will advise you, and I'm gonna give the best to you. And in the hopes that the people would look at him and say, man, you look like a king. You look like you could be our king. Absalom, don't you want to be our king instead of David? He's getting along in the tooth. And you've got all the gifts, man. You've just looked like a king. You've got all the kingly stuff. And Absalom loved the adulation. He loved the applause. He loved being in the public eye. And it wasn't long before his pride got the best of him. He declared a civil war against his father. He took some troops and he led a rebellion against his dad. Can you begin to comprehend the pain that David must have gone through at this particular point? There is nothing more painful than when you see your children going against the parents. When children forget the lessons that parents have taught them. When children decide that they can do it on their own. And many of them can. That's the incredible thing. And yet when they bring their parents down and elevate themselves at the expense of the parents, as we see here, what devastation that can bring to the parents. Now, David was devastated with this whole affair. His troops went out to war against Absalom's troops, and Absalom's troops were defeated by the armies of David. And we see a sad ending to this young man's tale. We see how this young, gifted guy was just too good for his own good. He was too clever, he was too good looking, he was too gifted. And sometimes people, your own gifts can get you into severe trouble. Sometimes your gifts are so good and so beautiful that if you don't manage them appropriately, they'll get you. Sometimes you become so good and so gifted that God cannot use you anymore. Some people are just too good and too gifted for God to even use, because God will never use somebody who thinks they can do it on their own, as Absalom thought. Absalom had forgotten about the lessons that he'd learned from watching his dad fight giants and fight Philistines and fight great wars. And he always did it in subjection to the power and the purpose of God. Absalom forgot that fact and thought that he could do it on his own. And there's a horrible verse, well, not a horrible verse, but a tragic verse that speaks of Absalom. And it says that he built a monument to himself. That means he built a statue to himself, because he said, I want people to remember me. Have a look, people. You have a look around and you see people building monuments to themselves. And they think that this is going to be something that people will remember me by. And how tragic will that be? Because no one's memory lasts forever. It's not long, it's 30 days and you're gone and people have replaced you already. So don't get too snotty about it, because there's always somebody in the wings ready to pick it up. Nobody's indispensable, for surely we know that. And yet here we see Absalom thinking, I want to be remembered, so I'll build my own monument to myself. Well, he saw his demise hanging on a tree. That which was his most beautiful attribute became the thing that tied him up. His hair got caught in the tree as he went under on his horse, and people came and they killed him while he hung in the tree. What a tragic end to such a gifted person. So in this story, there's a whole bunch of devotional aspects. Remember the beauty and the value of family, united family. War is bad enough, but civil war is 10 times worse. Remember to manage your giftedness, because God has given you great gifts, and there are people out there that there's always somebody more gifted than you and somebody less gifted than you. So get with the program here. You go and somebody else is going to replace you really quickly. And never build a monument to yourself, because that monument will one day dry up, be smashed to pieces and blow away in the wind, and people will never remember it. So let's remember, anything that's not built in the name and the power of God is all going to dry up and blow away one day. And what's remembered about us in heaven is far more important than that which will be said about us here on earth. So much stuff for us to think about today. I hope you do that. Cheers, guys. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.